All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Duckstories, brought to you by Telenor Velocity, global accelerator of Telenor Pakistan, along with our partners. This is a very special episode since we're doing this for the Global Entrepreneurship Week, which is this week, hosted by Global Entrepreneurship Network. Our other partners are Daftarkhwan, National Incubation Center, Karachi, and National Incubation Center, Lahore, Peshawar. So I'd just like to mention here that we have two very special guests here, and as part of the Global Entrepreneurship Week, we are focused on talking a bit about education, online learning, e-learning, and a lot of different things. There are rapid changes in the learners' expectations and students and demographics now. And because of the advent of e-learning technologies, there are a lot of new challenges, a lot of ways that traditional education is now being converted into online or e-learning by different education providers. Now, there are many startups and education startup founders and educationists out there who have risen to this challenge as well, and they are working towards providing this seamless online content and educational platforms to help students with customized learning solutions in their online classrooms versus their traditional classrooms. So, again, as I mentioned, we're bringing this episode to you. This is a very exclusive episode for the Global Entrepreneurship Week 2021. Just a bit about the Global Entrepreneurship Week. It's basically a platform that empowers these entrepreneurs and those who face systematic barriers to start scaling their own company. And through the Global Entrepreneurship Week, we focus on some distinct themes and areas to spotlight these impactful voices and organizations. This year's theme is around education, inclusion, ecosystems, and policy. And as part of the education episode, we are bringing you two speakers. So we have Hassan Bin Rizwan, founder of Sabaq, and Jaweria Sethi, founder of Edopia and Edopia Online with us today. So welcome, Hassan and Jaweria. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
Assalamualaikum. Looking forward to this, and thank you so much for the invitation. This sounds like it's going to be fun.
Thank you. It's a pleasure having you guys here. So, for those who don't know, Sabak is an award winning learning app for kids. And they use technology in education to provide children in Pakistan access to high quality educational content. On the other side, we have Edopia. So, Edopia Online is a platform where students can get alternate personalized learning. It is a very innovative online learning community where 7 to 13-year-olds can choose what they want to learn and which skills they want to enhance or thrive in this 21st century. So here, students get to design their own curriculum by choosing from multiple live learning experiences. I'm really excited about getting to know these platforms and your experiences while you guys have brought this forward. So, Javeri, I'm going to start with you. Just tell us a bit about your journey as an educationist, as a founder of Edopia, and then as well as Edopia Online.
Sure. Thank you for having us here today, Sanya. My journey started 8 years ago. I was a fresh graduate. I had just recently graduated from LUMS, and I started a school called Edopia. And the idea behind that space was कि हमने education as we know it उसको question करना था. So we took all the constituents that make a traditional school, from like textbooks, fixed desks, school bells, uniform. You tell me, whatever like school को क्या क्या चीजें define करती हैं. We took all of them and we broke them apart, and we are like, okay, which ones of these do we want to keep, and which ones of these do we want to question? So this is what the journey has been like for us across all these years. Edopia is an alternate school. It's a democratic school, the only democratic school in the country right now where the children really have a lot of say in how they govern this place, and also in terms of what they learn and how they learn it. So taking this idea forward across all these years and building this culture of respecting the opinions and respecting the voice of the children, we ventured into the pandemic, and usi se Edopia Online was born out of it, and it was honestly just an adaptation of what we were doing at Edopia. But then we realized, online education or on-ground education, though both different realms hain, and they have to be looked at differently, which is why we came up with an online learning platform which is not like a school. It's very modular in nature. It is, again, very choice based. And like you have defined it perfectly, that it's a place where children can really design their own curriculums based on how, what fits in with their choices and what fits in with their interests. And It is something that we're still working with. It's very new. But along the way, I think we're learning a lot from the parent community, from the students who are joining us, and hopefully, we're going to scale it from here.
Thank you, Jaweria. And I've been obviously a follower of Edopia School, and I know you guys have really, really worked hard to change some of the norms of education, traditional educationists or traditional education that is provided. So, hoping all the best for Edopia Online as well. Hassan, over to you. So, I would love to know. I would love to know your experiences while making Sabaq, the journey, come to life, and by providing educational content through technology to children. So, what has your journey been like?
So we started about 5.5 years ago, and at that point we were driven purely by one impulse, and that was to make a dent in the education space in the kindergarten to grade five space. Now, if you look at the education landscape in Pakistan, we do hear about 22 million kids who are not in school, who are out of school, and then we also see that 95% of the students are enrolled at a kindergarten level. So from kindergarten level, grade five, and then all the way to grade nine and 10, there is a constant drop off of students throughout the grades. And the maximum of that drop off happens between kindergarten and grade five. और वो बच्चे जो kindergarten grade 5 से एक दफा drop out हो जाते हैं, for them to come back into the school is almost impossible. And those are those 2.25 करोड़ बच्चे जिनकी हर जगह बात होती है कि ये second chance students हैं, how do we bring them back, what can we do? So we felt that it is important to identify some technology solution that would work at scale. And in that journey, we tried to first improve the learning outcomes of students that are currently in low income schools. That would include private schools, non-profit schools, government schools. और इस पूरे process में we developed fun and engaging, story-based, cartoon-based animated lessons that are purely concept-based. So they help students to understand the basic and fundamental concepts of math, which are typically difficult for any particular teacher to explain or teach in the right way. और जिसकी वजह से बच्चों की फाउंडेशन बड़ी वीक होती है. जब फाउंडेशन वीक होती है तो दे आर नॉट एबल टू परफॉर्म एट अ हायर ग्रेड लेवल 4, 5 and 6, जहां पे जाके उनकी एंगेजमेंट डिमिनिश होना शुरू हो जाती है. दे फील लेस इंटरेस्टेड इन द लेसन्स एंड दे फील they just don't belong in the classroom. So we wanted to build that capacity early on, so there is a stronger foundation and those kids could be given a better opportunity, and they have more choices as they move forward in their school career. So last 5, 6 years, we've developed a lot of very customized products with a lot of our partners. We've worked with governments, both provincial and federal governments, and also with nonprofit schools and private schools. And almost over 2,000 schools have been using our learning solution and the content that we produced. And almost 250,000 students have benefited from that content, have shown to improve their learning outcomes, have shown to improve their attendance in the classrooms when the digital lessons are being conducted, have shown to improve the engagement in a specific classroom setting with the same teacher who was not able to bring that engagement in the classroom. So overall, the journey has been full of challenges, yes, especially in COVID when the schools were shut down. But it has been a journey of experience, of learning, and that has allowed us to reimagine what a good, engaging, exciting learning classroom could look like, even at a low cost model. And we're working with our government partners to do some of those experiments so that those solutions could be brought to scale in almost 150,000 government schools we have in Pakistan.
Wow, and that's quite a journey. I feel like you guys have been. I'm sure it must have been a roller coaster as well. But you started talking about some of the things that I'm really excited to listen to regarding shifting to the online journey and how it is. I feel like e-learning was underutilized in the past, especially in the developing countries. And you're absolutely right. The current crisis of the pandemic has forced the entire world to rely on it for education. But in both your opinions, I think my next question to you, both of you, would be: what are the key challenges that you faced as educationists and startup founders during the COVID-19 period in Pakistan, and how easy was it for people to accept the concept of e-learning to teach the children?
Um, okay,
I
I'll
think,
go first.
yeah, yeah, you can go first.
We can keep on alternating like that. So I believe that obviously जब pandemic आया तो it had like different stages to it, our acceptance and everything around technology. तो सबसे पहले तो denial था, कि ये हो गया है, and we felt like we were closing our schools for like एक दो हफ्ते, and then it just got prolonged to 1.5 years. So there was denial, then there was reluctant acceptance कि अच्छा अब हो गया, but we were still a bit put off by the idea of technology initially कि ये क्यों करना पड़ रहा है, and this is so inconvenient, and a lot of people were also not really ready for it as such. But very gradually, and I would say although it was gradually, but at the same time not as gradually as it would have been had there been no pandemic, there was appreciation for e-learning as well. So जहाँ से हम लोगों ने start किया से till जहाँ तक हम आए, I think without the pandemic it would not have been possible. So it was a very very powerful catalyst, and at an unprecedented level लोगों ने अपने आप को upskill किया. So लोगों में आते हैं teachers, उनको में parents आते हैं, and again we also had the students who really upskilled themselves as well. So it could not have been possible without the pandemic. Now in terms of challenges, I understand access is something that will be the challenge for our country, because पाकिस्तान में बहुत ज़्यादा जो disparities थी वो further exaggerate हो गई थी, because the haves and have nots में बहुत ज़्यादा difference ये आ गया था कि जिसके पास internet है, जो कि हाई स्पीड इंटरनेट है, डिवाइसेस हैं, तो उनके लिए तो लर्निंग बहुत आराम से आसानी से होगी, एंड जहाँ पे नहीं था इंटरनेट का एक्सेस या डिवाइसेस का 1:1 की रेशो में एक्सेस नहीं था, वहाँ पे पीपल रियली रियली हैड टू गेट वेरी इनोवेटिव टू मेक श्योर दैट सम लर्निंग कीप्स ऑन हैपनिंग. सो फॉर अस, क्योंकि जिस ऑडियंस के साथ मैं वर्क कर रही थी वहाँ पे चैलेंज एक्सेस का इतना ज़्यादा नहीं था, लेकिन एंगेजमेंट का था, because जो online realm है, it can be very isolating, and it can be a tricky realm to navigate through. So I think initially हमारे लिए engagement was a challenge, but over time, as we continue discussion, I can share ways in which we were able to overcome those challenges as well. So I just believe that it was a blessing in disguise, and had it not been for the pandemic, I don't think जिस तरह अब हम लोग व्यू करते हैं ऑनलाइन लर्निंग को या ऑनलाइन का realm पूरा, just the fact that we're having a meeting over here while being in our own, the comfort from our own homes and everything, ये possible नहीं था. So yeah, I guess it is something which has a lot of untapped potential, and still something that hasn't been explored to its full extent yet, but it is exciting. The realm of online learning is exciting.
Absolutely, and I share your excitement too. Hassan, what about you? What do you think?
So, I think definitely pandemic के दौरान एक sudden accelerated adoption हम सब ने witness की, जिससे हमें कुछ फायदा भी हुआ, जिससे हमें कुछ lessons भी मिले सीखने को. And I think any technology when it is adopted at such an accelerated rate, it comes with a lot of surprises. It comes with a lot of shocks, and customers sometimes are not ready, and they're not educated along the way to sort of best use that technology. Can I imagine 20, 25 years ago, mobile technology slowly penetrated, and then we got to some data in 2G and edge format, and then got to 3G, and then got to 4G, and then over the last 20 years, people have gotten used to the right way to use the mobile technology. It's found its place in our lifestyle. With education, with online learning, what happened? A lot of the people who were delivering online learning, a lot of the schools, they were not prepared to deliver it in the best format. And lot of the teachers who were doing the lessons, they weren't trained to do it. And a lot of the students who were attending, they also didn't know the protocols. Whether you can run an online class for a grade 1 student, kindergarten student, grade 3 student, with 25 students, some with camera on, some with camera off. all those protocols just made some of these parents feel that this is never going to work. And you speak to some of the parents who experience online learning, they are extremely against it. So those kinds of parents are also potential users of Jaweria and of our team. And when we reach out to them, we sort of have to convince them that you've had a bad experience. That does not mean online learning is all bad. It can be delivered in a better way. There are protocols. It has to be managed a certain way. The teachers have to be trained. The lesson plan has to be designed and delivered differently in an online setting than it is done in an offline setting. So I think those things are what people like us need to work on and make sure we sort of win that trust that we want our customers to have. And I think that trust, whoever comes with a solution that delivers better experience, that delivers that trust, and is able to convince its user base that online learning can deliver on the promised outcomes, I think those solutions would be scalable and also successful going forward.
Absolutely, and I really like what you said about trust. Parents skill, especially because they are the end customer per se, so it's really important for them to really trust the platform and what kind of content is being played online as well. Javeria, in your opinion, so you've been an educationist for a very long time, and then obviously you had to shift from the traditional form to online learning during the pandemic as well. Um, just want to ask you, what is your opinion? How do you evaluate? And आपने actually बोला भी कि in terms of engagement, you were really able to get students engaged online. So in terms of engagement, how do you evaluate that engagement in this form of activity? And what are the challenges some of your teachers might have faced during these e-learning lessons?
Sanya, something that really kind of worked with for me is कि जब pandemic start हुआ है उसी के साथ I started my master's program, and I started it at Harvard, and we are the only online batch for Harvard in the history of the university, because इससे पहले भी और इसके बाद भी they're not doing any masters जो कि इस तरह online होगा जिस तरह का हमारा था. The entire experience, the entire batch shifted online, and we were from 66 different countries. And I was very skeptical about the entire experience initially कि किस तरह होगा, and how are we going to get involved, are we actually going to benefit from the Harvard experience as we know it or not. But the way they designed it, it was absolutely seamless. ऐसे लगता ही नहीं है कि we are, in different places, and at the same time we're completely engaged. We're on our toes when we're in our classes. And unse jab ye dekha, how is it that they are doing it? I feel like we got to learn from the best then, because I'm sure कि अगर हम लोग यहाँ पे 4-5 लोग with our bare minimum experience और जुगाड़, as Pakistanis are known for it, हम लोग इस चीज़ को डिजाइन करने की कोशिश करते हैं, versus experts from the world, the best minds from the entire world sitting together and figuring out how to do it. तो वहाँ से बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिला. And one thing that Hassan said, and I'm just going to build on that, is कि teaching online and teaching on ground are two very different experiences, and they need to be looked at as such. You cannot just transplant one thing into another. You have to really redesign a lot of things. So choti choti cheezein hoti thi, like how to use breakout rooms, how to use note catchers, how to still work with big numbers in the same space without people feeling alienated. मतलब lecture में तो anyway people doze off very easily even if it is happening in a classroom. But imagine a lecture taking place in a 2-hour online class. Now people have the luxury to switch off their cameras, switch off their mics, and just go to another room for all they care. So how do you make sure that people still have to remain attentive and engaged and are learning from each other? So इसके लिए हमें बहुत साथ वहाँ से सीखा, वहाँ से सीख के यहाँ पर आके डिस्कस किया. फिर we started redesigning our teacher training and how we work with our faculty members and team members. So I think एक ongoing process. I wouldn't say that we have now perfected it, but I feel like we have now started on a new kind of a journey when it comes to professional development and student engagement as well. Because honestly, if I ask my students, there will be quite a few of them who still prefer the on-ground experience because of a lot of other reasons, as a social interaction. It's very tactile and all of that. But the kind of affordances that we saw in online learning, वो जिस तरह का एक्सेस है, जिस तरह का collaborative work आप online learning में कर सकते हैं, जिस तरह आप responses collect कर सकते हैं, how you make learning visible for all members of the group. That's kind of hard to do in on ground learning. So जो नई affordances हैं उससे हम लोगों को इतनी आदत हो गई थी by the time that we shifted back, that the school looks very different for us on campus now as well. It has a very different feel to it. And now that we have ventured into Edopia Online, which is not a school but a platform, which is going to be modular in nature, and उसमें project based learning and further tools को हम or for explore करें, we're trying to make sure that every child has a unique learning pathway and not everyone is studying the same thing at the same time or solving the same problems at the same time. I just feel like, there's so much more that still needs to be explored to really make use of what we have with us now.
That's true. And आपने अभी just you just mentioned it just made me think of a follow up questions. आपने कहा कि there are obviously some students जो कि accept करते हैं, invite करते हैं online learning, and some people are not. Some students are not. So what are some of these factors that influence the acceptance and use of technology amongst the students? Like why are they keen towards going for online learning?
I think it is going to be based on a range of factors. Like the personality, disposition itself is one thing. Like some people prefer being home and learning, and this as an मैं एक adult हूँ, and I honestly prefer this kind of a learning model over going to a campus and studying because it saves me time. I'm also a working professional, and I need to be in a lot of places at a lot of different times, so it's easy for me to exit one room and enter one room very quickly. And again, जिस तरह का अगर हम breakout rooms हैं, तो the convenience जो एक educator को मिलती है to go and visit different people very quickly, it's almost like teleportation, तो वो वाली affordances नहीं होती थी. लेकिन students के अंदर भी I feel like even younger students have a preference. So some students generally appreciate a more tactile learning environment because they want to be around their friends. They want to reach out to the teacher physically and ask things, or they generally perhaps don't have that much of a command over technology and prefer something that's simpler and old fashioned. But then there are so many students who, even like जब हम hybrid चले गए थे, बीच में काफी ऐसे phases आते थे pandemic में, when the school was also open and the online learning was also going on, a lot of people still opted to remain online, even not just because of the COVID itself, but because they preferred learning that way. I have a 5-year-old nephew who refuses to come to school because he's like, I can do this online. I would rather use my time differently. And it has been a challenge because he didn't really come to school before this. So for him to come to school and to adjust to this life is harder because he got so used to learning online. So it's a mix of a lot of factors, including the personality of the person who's engaging with technology, how comfortable they are with the two different mediums, and overall, how well organized it is. Because if it is a poorly organized online learning platform or system, then obviously people are going to be reluctant. But if it is a well organized one and people are really having a good time learning this way, then they might want to stick to it for a longer period of time as well.
Agreed, absolutely. So before I move to Hassan, I just want to let the audience know I am seeing people coming in and out of the session, and there are some comments as well. Just letting you guys know that we will be doing a Q&A session right after the conversations are ending. So अगर if आपके पास कोई सवाल है, anything you guys want to ask regarding e-learning, online learning, anything for the speakers as well, would love to have this engaging session at the end as well. Hassan, so I want to ask you one thing. So we've been reading a lot about reading and obviously hearing a lot about young generation shifting to new sorts of apps and social media platforms for the learning landscape. So according to you, what are the major drivers for this shift from convention to online, and are there any factors that are limiting this shift?
So, one of the biggest factors is that the young kids are born with devices in their hands. And even when they're sitting in a classroom, and I'm talking about higher education, obviously, even when they're sitting in the classroom, they have a cell phone and a laptop, multiple devices. So either they are, the professor is teaching, and they are searching live immediately at that point what the professor is talking about. A lot of times there have been cases in international universities where the professor said something that was not absolutely true, or maybe like a week or a few days outdated, and he would be corrected right there and then. Some student be like, no, actually this it turned out to be a false news, and then here there is a new article that this thing changed just a couple of days ago. So I think people like us who are trying to, who are from a Gen Z, from a Gen Y, and building solutions for Gen Z. And supposedly there is a new generation for kids who, were born after 2011. Baby boomers, that generation, spread across 26, 28 years. And then Gen X spread across 15, 18 years, and Gen Y for, 12, 13 years. And now Gen Z and the next generation, exponential time. So it seems like every 6, 7 years, it's a new generation. And I have a personal experience. I'm a part-time teacher myself, and some of my students, I wanted to create a community so that we could coordinate. And then from my own mindset, I was suggesting that we could use Gmail, because that was sort of the official format in the community. And they said, "What Gmail? We don't use Gmail. We don't use Gmail for chat. We use Discord." And I was like, "What? What is what is Discord?" They're like, "Sir, don't worry about it. We'll create a community. We'll set up the channels. We'll do all of that, and then that's where we are." So instead of inviting them to your space, I think it's very important to understand where are the kids hanging out, what apps are they using, how are they communicating to each other, and whoever is creating that educational learning environment, if you go to where they are, they would be more welcoming, because these kids are born with lots and lots of choices. And what choices do, I mean, there's a good side of having choices, meaning freedom, but there's a bad choice of having choices. Is if you have a lot of choices, it creates this disillusion of having too many choices. It gives you anxiety. There's been so much research about having too many options. You can't really decide. 20 years ago, we had one TV channel. We all would watch the shittiest show on earth. But now we have 5 streaming services, new content coming out, and then our list of things we want to watch just keeps increasing. We never got to watch anything. So these kids are in their own space. They are constantly distracted. They live with this idea that multitasking works, and there is plenty of evidence that it doesn't work in many cases. I mean, it works in medial tasks, but if you want to build a space rocket, then you can be doing multitasking. So for these kids, I think it's important to understand what channels, what communities, what spaces they occupy, and find those channels, connect with them, and that's where the learning will happen for them. Some of the solution providers are doing it. In India, there is a lot of innovation over the last 1.5 years, where recorded lectures are no longer a hit. What's happening now is they're really trying to innovate the online learning experience. And there are several use cases, different formats. One teacher to a large class of 800, 1,000 students. One teacher to a small class of 6 or 10. Two teachers with one student in an online environment. There are two teachers for one student. One teacher is purely teaching. The other teacher is sort of moderating the environment, looking at is the child sort of responding to the questions or not. Sometimes the two teachers engage in a conversation with each other, create more of a dialogue-like scenario for the child. And those are obviously high-priced, very premium classes. But the idea is that online, the way we imagine it to be, like there's somebody who's sort of delivering a lecture, looking at the screen, or maybe sharing their screen, and a talking head in the bottom right corner. I think those experiences will be sort of reimagined several times over by innovators in this space. And a good online learning experience will be the one where every student feels engaged. And I like the word that Jaweria used. She said that online environments are naturally very isolating. So you really have to make a lot of effort to make sure that students feel they're part of it. And I think one important quality that every teacher needs to have in a classroom or on an online in an online environment is they really need to be passionate about uh, learning and improving the lives of their students. And that passion, if you have on a scale of 1 to 10, if you have five passion for a physical classroom setting. For an online, you have to have 11 on a scale of one. You really have to be, you have to be looking like you're energized, you're happy, you want it to be there. If the teacher is like, with a dull face, with a very dull, mellow voice, if that's how they're teaching, people would fall asleep. So you have to engage kids, you have to put in extra energy. And I think there is a lot of room for innovation in how online learning, online instruction is to be delivered.
Absolutely. I think that leads me to my next question to both of you. And this is again, I like you mentioned, Hassan, that you do teaching part time as well. I know many people in my circle, my family, as well as friends who are teaching as well. And during the pandemic, all I heard was them complain about the fact that online learning has added to their workload because आपको constantly engaging content वही बनाना पड़ता है. You have to make use of different tools and techniques to keep the students engaged online. But do you think, in your opinion, e-learning has it provided more educational opportunities with less effort, or more? And obviously, both of you can answer side by side.
I'll just quickly add to what Hassan said because this was very interesting because I had a Discord experience as well just yesterday. We wanted to set up a community, an online learning community management software school mein, and everyone just wanted Discord. So I think it's very important to be in those spaces. And I think answering your question, Sanya, honestly, right now, the way I look at online learning, and it will continue to evolve. What I'm saying right now, it will get outdated so quickly that, this is the reality of where we are at. It is now not, and since my expertise or the area that I work with is live learning, so it is always going to be a teacher and a student engaging in a space through live interaction. We don't do content creation as such, so we are more like people who orchestrate experiences. So uske andar I do feel कि online learning में the kind of resources that we have now access to, we have to kind of move away from content creation to making the best use of those resources and creating those experiences in ways jahan par the children can really use that material and use each other as well as they learn. So अगर उस आर्ट को आहिस्ता आहिस्ता टीचर्स मास्टर करना शुरू करते हैं, which again requires a lot of professional development, requires a lot of discussions. So they really can make use of the online resources and save their energy and save their effort, and let people learn from each other if they design a good enough experience. And obviously, like I said, it's not easy to do that. It requires a lot of training. हम लोगों को सिखाया भी जाता है, देखा भी जाता है that a good teacher doesn't talk for like more than 30 to 40% of the class time. And if a teacher is actually talking for more than that, then there is something problematic about that entire experience. एक और rule ये होता है कि if there is something that two children can teach to each other, the teacher should not be the one teaching it to the students. So it's all about orchestrating those experiences which can save your time. I had a teacher in one of my courses. Uh, वो खुद obviously online में you are sitting in one place, but literally she was sitting in one place, and हम लोग 2 घंटे के लिए we're constantly breakout rooms shift हो रहे हैं, नया prompt आ रहा है, something to think about, something to read, something to view, while the teacher was sitting very peacefully. She wasn't running around, and she said that, Rhonda Bondi, she said, this is how my physical classes are also designed, that I stay in one place, I do a lot of looking and listening, and I create experiences where people talk to each other. So this is one thing that again is going to be very interesting, and for teachers to explore further how to create these experiences. And again, we're venturing into a world. Metaverse is already something that is being talked about a lot, and something that we hear a lot at the university as well is about AI taking over, and how immersive experiences are going to be the future of learning. So future of learning बहुत unpredictable है, but it is going to be a space जिसे अब आप you just can't just turn back and say, जैसे schools चल रहे थे वैसे चलते रहे, जैसे learning चल रही थी चलती रहे. It is going, the future of learning is going to be hybrid, because again we just can't thrive in those digital communities all day all long as well. We need the human experience as well. People crave for the wind in on their face and the sun and the company of their friends in person as well. But at the same time, the affordances that we have with the new technology and how we can use all of those to create experiences, उसमें बहुत कुछ है जो अभी हमें नहीं पता, but we need to stay on top of all of that to really make use of it. That is all I can say.
Agreed, agreed. And I love the fact that you mentioned or highlighted the fact that and it sort of resonates with Hassan, what Hassan said as well, okay, generation by generation, it's evolving. The way we are learning, the way we are consuming content or educational content is also evolving. Hassan, what about you?
So definitely, this complaint we've heard from a lot of teachers, and it's a genuine complaint, because they were thrown into an environment they weren't prepared for, they weren't trained for. So a lot of times in hybrid environment, one new task that has emerged for teachers is that they have to make sure that the recording is done, and they record, and the recording has to be shared with all the students who did not attend. On the fly, if you're running a Zoom session and you want to create a poll, then it's almost impossible. And a lot of those things have to be done as part of the lesson planning. So, as Jaweria earlier said, that lesson plan for a physical environment is done differently. Lesson planning for an online environment is done differently. If you want to run classes in hybrid mode, then you have to make sure that you're engaging the kids online and also engaging the kids that are sitting in the classroom. And that was happening until very few days ago, when school attendance was only limited to 50%. And that definitely is a challenging task. But there will be a solution for it. Someone's going to innovate something. Already, there are automating solutions that sort of make sure that if you record something, automatically gets synced to whatever online repository your organization is using, and then people can get access to it. And those are opportunities for innovators to come and identify and then create solutions for. So eventually, as this online space is constantly evolving, and for us, sort of, Pakistani parents and teachers and school owners have been forced to adopt this uh, tech space that has been evolving in the US for over 20 years, in India for over 10 years. So they've had that, time to react to it, to respond to it, to adopt slowly, to build solutions. It's been difficult for us because it slowly sort of happened, in a very haphazard way, and that's why there is a lot of dissonance, there's a lot of disagreement, there's a lot of disconnect that you see in parents, especially those of young kids who just said, it is almost impossible to make sure my fourth grader can sit in front of a laptop and really, say that they came out of learning. I am experiencing this thing. There is this normal chatter among teachers that the students who didn't take O-level exams in the last 2 years, that this is the COVID generation. So the last 2 years of the students who didn't take exam, obviously when you don't take the final exam, you don't really put in the last effort and you don't revise a lot of topics. So that's sort of may be highlighted as the COVID generation, and you begin to see that some of those students don't have those fundamental and foundational concepts that are necessary that you expect the students to have at those grades. And eventually, teachers would have a lot of that prep done for them by the academic department, or they would have had to do it during the summertime. But for you to be able to conduct an online lesson, you have to do extra prep. There is a lot of things that needs to be, catered to, need to be looked into, and if that means it's an added effort, yes. But the good thing with tech is you don't have to make that effort every time. If you make a document with a lot of quizzes, with a lot of prompts, with a lot of resources, then you can sort of use them again and again. If it's a school network, you just have to create it, once, and then just spread it across your 100 branches, and then every teacher would have access to it. So that's the beauty of technology. That it looks like it's a lot of work up front, but the thing, the word scale, you only can use it with internet. And that scale is what everybody's after. That scale is what excites us. That scale is what people are creating new solutions in the tech space.
Absolutely. And Hassan, I think you mentioned one thing, कि you were comparing our educational time with or the way we have progressed compared to India, compared to US. So मेरा आखिरी सवाल होगा आपसे before we move on to the Q&A. We have a couple of questions lined up as well. When you're both of your opinions, are we as a country too early, too late, or just in time for online education?
So very very good question, and definitely before COVID, the fact we started 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago, and we had to sort of convince school owners that blended learning is really going to help and change their learning environment. This is something really exciting for you. So it seemed like we were too early. We were too early to bring a solution to the market that there was no awareness for. And COVID happened, and suddenly it happened in such a rush. There is a lot of backlash, and there is a lot of negative sentiment in the market about online learning and online possibilities that it seems like, oh my God, it was a bit too rushed. So I think the timing is about right. It just accelerated the adoption that created a bit of backlash in the customer, and that trust that I referred to earlier, that trust has to be won back by people like us, by people like Jaweria and other innovators that are watching this podcast. So that trust, people have to make sure that they deliver on the promised learning outcomes, they deliver on the promised learning experience, that they make sure they consider their learner, the parents of the learners, part of a community, that they respond to their request, and they make sure that online experiences are not just done as a checklist item, but it's done with a purpose. And online learning is to be delivered with the right protocols, right format that have to constantly be evolving. So I think if you compare where we are with India in terms of adoption, in India there are already 100 million plus students are connected online. In Pakistan there is maybe one application, a learning solution that can claim that they have more than 1 million users. So that's, if you just add everybody else, maybe a collective 2 million users. So that's like 50x on where Pakistan is. And in terms of 4G adoption, we are about the same rate. In terms of any other technology, we are about at the same rate with India. But in edtech, I think we are maybe 7 to 8 years, at least until COVID happened, we were maybe 10 years behind. But now maybe next 3 4 years will be very crucial if innovators bring solutions that are that deliver on the promised outcomes, that deliver on the promised experience. I think the adoption could be like wildfire.
Absolutely. And Javeria, what about you before we just move to the Q&A? What do you think?
I just believe that Hassan was very eloquent in summarizing all that needs to be said about this. I think we're almost just in time because I feel like overall the world is right now a little bit, they're struggling, they're hopeful, there's optimism. There's a lot around e-learning, and I don't think हम बहुत behind हैं. हाँ, we are behind in access, and that's something that I wish can be improved. But beyond access, I think बहुत सारी ऐसी opportunities हैं जो unlock होना शुरू हो जाएंगी. So we are almost just in time for it. We're really मतलब बहुत सारी ऐसी चीज़ें होती हैं जिसमें पाकिस्तान बहुत पीछे होता है, बहुत दूर होता है, लेकिन आई डू फील कि अभी पूरी दुनिया ही इस पूरे डायलेमा के साथ स्ट्रगल कर रही है और इसमें से दे आर ट्राइंग टू मेक द
Absolutely.
मोस्ट आउट ऑफ इट.
Absolutely. And I think we'll move to we have a couple of questions. The first one is not directed to anyone in particular. So maybe you both can answer. It's from Amna Sheikh, and she says, is online education, e-teaching, e-learning, and e-examination effective in secondary, tertiary, and higher education?
I mean, like, it can be made effective. Is it already effective? It really depends on a lot of factors surrounding a specific person's secondary education experience or a tertiary experience. So it really depends on where the person is, what kind of technology do they have access to, or kind of capacity building has been done in that regard. बच्चा कहाँ है, teacher की क्या, development, professional development कितनी हुई है. Um, in the most ideal scenario, it is extremely effective. But obviously, if they are marked with constraints, then it is something that is going to be a challenge. So I guess it is going to be very context dependent. But yes, really amazing things can be done with education in secondary, tertiary, higher education as well, if
Yeah,
the resources are there for it.
yeah. Just
I
like you
I
said
feel
about your own Harvard experience. Yeah,
Like I feel, because obviously it has been designed really, really well. So I would not exchange it for an on-campus experience now,
yeah,
because I was able to meet people, interact with them, build, live, be in a community without being there, without leaving my work, without leaving my family. I would not give it up for anything now. But then that was the most ideal, so to be in the most
for
ideal
you at that
circumstance.
time. Exactly.
Yeah.
Hassan, what about you?
so. Anybody who feels that technology or learning through technology can only be effective in secondary and tertiary learning need to just give a little mobile phone, turn YouTube on to a 1.5-year-old, and and see what happens in a couple of months. So I think digital experience is not limited to any particular age. We used to feel that okay, people who are of a certain age, our parents or grandparents, okay, it's going to be super difficult for them to learn technology. But now all of us or all of our elders are very comfortable with Facebook, with Twitter, with YouTube, and I think what these tech developers did, they started to understand that that was a problem, and they continue to make things more and more simple. And I think वो कहते हैं ना कि वो वक्त दूर नहीं जहाँ पे आपके पास मोबाइल phone is just going to be you wouldn't need to pick any app. You would just very conveniently, although it's like practically possible today, but we don't do it that frequently. You just voice command. You just say, okay, that's what I want to do, and then can you do it, Jarvis? Can you play my favorite song? So those experiences will definitely be shaped over the next few years. Kids learn from games. They learn from and then you'd be surprised. You talk to a kid who is 7, 8 year old, they know more about Japanese culture because they watch anime than you could ever learn by reading 10 books. I think we also have to understand what learning really is, and क्या लर्निंग वही है जो आपके करिकुलम के स्ट्रिक्ट लर्निंग आउटकम्स के अगेंस्ट है, या learning just learning to be an individual who could feel connected with the global culture, and I think that's also very important. A lot of good games actually provide that experience. Roblox एक बड़ा मशहूर गेम है, Minecraft गेम है जिसमें बच्चे they are the creators of experiences themselves. 10-12 साल के बच्चे are actually feeling so empowered that they are creating experiences for other kids, creating learning experiences and games. So हमें I think नहीं भूलना चाहिए कि जो बच्चे हैं वो उतने ही participant hai of this digital experience. Yes, there is something to be said about not giving a cell phone with a phone to a young kid. You have to wait till 13, 14, 15, जो भी safe age है. Digital environment की safety की precaution लेना बहुत जरूरी है parents के लिए. But our screen time एक अपना factor है. Up to a certain age, a certain number of minutes से ज्यादा नहीं दिखाना चाहिए. बट आई थिंक हमें ये नहीं देखना चाहिए कि हम प्रिविलेज हैं, 8 साल के हो गए तो हम प्रिविलेज हैं फॉर डिजिटल स्पेसेस. आई थिंक 0 to 80, 90, 100 सबका इक्वल स्टेक है ऑन ऑन द ऑनलाइन स्पेस. सबके लिए एक्सपीरियंसेस डिजाइन हो रहे हैं, एंड इफ यू आर एन इनोवेटर, find that space that nobody else is looking at. If everybody is looking at 9, 10, 11, 12 an exam prep, then that means everything else is open for you to build a solution for.
agreed, absolutely. आपके लिए एक और सवाल है हसन. So Fatima Rais is asking, what kind of educational content is the most watched on Sabaq?
Um, so That's an interesting question because we produce content for math, science, English, and Urdu. And our most watched content is this series that we produced with a character called Munnu. And it's a 34 episode series. Each episode is about one letter. It's a short 3 to 4 minute video where this character is talking to this teacher who tells him about a particular लेटर एंड देन शेप उसकी कैसे है, लिखना उसको कैसे है, वो वर्ड के साथ जुड़ता कैसे है, और वो मजे मजे के जोक्स करता है, वो थोड़ी सी मस्ती करता है. एंड वी बिकेम सो पॉपुलर. We'll put it up on YouTube, and then it has millions of views. It got so popular that it was picked up by the federal ministry last year for the teleschool transmission, and it's been airing since last year. Several of our partner schools have sort of taken that content from YouTube and put it up on their school repository. And another important thing about that content is that उर्दू बच्चों को पढ़ाना बहुत मुश्किल है. Because उर्दू एक बहुत मुश्किल ज़बान है in terms of the script. उर्दू बोलना बड़ा आसान है क्योंकि हम तो बोलते हैं, मगर ज़बान जो पढ़ने के लिए उर्दू बड़ी डिफिकल्ट लैंग्वेज है, बिकॉज एक एक लेटर की तीन तीन शेप्स हैं. इंग्लिश में फिर भी एक ही शेप है, अगर आप कैपिटल लेटर्स की बात करें मे बी दो शेप्स हैं, पर वो शेप वही रहती है, ए जैसा ही रहता है, वो मिल के कुछ और नहीं बन जाता. मगर बे जो है वो जब लेटर वर्ड के स्टार्ट में आता है तो छोटा हो जाता है, एंड में आता है तो बड़ा हो जाता है. सो वो चीजें एड्रेस करता है ये कंटेंट, तो जिसकी वजह से इसकी काफी पॉपुलर.
Okay. And आपके लिए जो मेरा आखिरी सवाल है, so Sharbano is asking, and I'm guessing Sharbano would be a mother, which is why she's asking for her child. So she's asking, you are working in a traditional classroom learning and also online. What do you think is the best form of learning for a child between 6 to 10 years of age?
Best form of learning, as in between the traditional and the online.
Yes.
Um, Again,
For a
this,
six between a 6 to 10 years of age child.
I think, Sanya, dono tarha ke environments have their own affordances, which now cannot be ignored. So even for a 6 to 10 year old, there's so much that the digital realm now offers that we can't just say that traditional इस age तक जो है वो traditional ही बेहतर है, उसके बाद आप I might say that for preschool, because I feel कि preschool के हद तक when the children are below 6, they really definitely benefit a lot more from a more tactile learning experience. But as they move forward, and as we look at all the different tools that are available, I think it would be very unfair for us to exclude this age group and say कि एक certain age के बाद ही we'll introduce technology and we'll let them engage with it, because that would mean that they might not be as equipped as the rest of the world is now by the time they're slightly older. So I think, again, it is going to depend on the preference of the child, the preference of the family. What is it that they're looking for? If they're looking for a more modular experience, then online offers a lot more alternatives than what a traditional school is going to offer, because traditional school mein everyone learns the same thing at the same time at the same pace, and that might not work for some of the children. So again, एक फैमिली की अपनी प्रेफरेंस के हद तक लिमिटेड होगा ये. Though, just to summarize what a good learning experience is all about, उसमें content plays a role, उसमें autonomy plays a role, competence of the child plays a role, but सबसे ज़्यादा जो important चीज़ होती है if it is a life learning experience is the disposition that the teacher brings to the class. So a traditional experience may be, if the teacher is really into it, the experience can become really magical. And same goes for the online realm as well. I've had a teacher who would dance on Zoom. She wouldn't take her classes while sitting. She took all of her classes standing. The course was called Education on the Move, and it was questioning the way we teach students and how we're only teaching the brain and not to the body. So we expect children to be sitting in a certain way, looking at the screen or the paper, being extremely focused. और उसी को हम equate करते हैं good learning से. So I think, as long as you have good company, if it's a live learning experience, be it in terms of your peers, your educator, then even in the most boring spaces, yeah, most bland environments, you can still have a great learning experience. Or on the other hand, you can be in a metaverse and you can still feel like, what is this all about? So it's going to be a mix of a lot of different factors in the end.
Well said, Jaweria. I think we're going to close our session. Any parting words, any sort of message you want to give out to parents, children, anything that you guys want to say before we close the session? Hassan, maybe you can go first.
So I think parents, those who experienced or those who had a poor experience of seeing their kids not being engaged in online learning, I think I would just like to tell them that that was because it was all rushed. It was a rushed job. We all didn't get to prepare for it, and give us a couple of years. Trust me, it's going to be better. And for all the innovators who are trying to build the next big startup in that space, I would like to invite you, if you're thinking at any other space like fintech or e-commerce, I think leave that space to other people, thousands of people looking at it. Education is where you can build a solution not just for Pakistan but for the international market. And just look at what's happening in our neighboring country. India is on a mission to do to the world what they're saying China did in the 90s and 2000s in the manufacturing space. They're saying that we will make everybody become jobless in every country. We will teach the world online. And I think if they can have such a big dream, we have just the same amount of talent and capacity. And the fact that in Pakistan we're bilingual, we speak English, a big majority of us, and we can build solutions that is not just for Pakistani space, but can be exported, can be scaled internationally, and can bring in the much needed foreign reserves, and also sort of you know allow us to become the educators of the world.
Wonderful. Yes, absolutely right. And I love the message that you're giving as well. Javeria, what about you? Any parting words?
I just say that, leverage what you have, whether you're a parent, a student, a teacher. Just see what is out there, make the best use of it, question everything that you're experiencing, whether it's in the online realm or the on campus realm. एजुकेशन के एक्सपीरियंस को डिज़ाइन करना हर किसी के हाथ में अपने बच्चे के लिए, it's not something that you have to go through, it's not something that is being imposed on you. You still have a lot of power when it comes to how you want to raise your child. So leverage whatever is out there, question whatever is out there, and create an experience that suits you the most, suits the needs of your families, the interests, the aptitudes of your children, and just enjoy what is coming your way and appreciate it a lot more. I guess be very active in engaging with this idea of online learning.
Absolutely. Guys, it was a pleasure having both of you here. I actually feel like time just flew by. The 1 hour, I didn't really get to know how it flew by, but thank you. This was a wonderful discussion. It's obviously given me some food for thought, and I would like to call you guys again, maybe sometime next year, to yet another episode for Duck Stories as well.
Call us before we become too busy and famous.
Definitely.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. Thank you,
Thank you.
Javeria.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hassan. Take care of yourself. Have a lovely
Bye.
evening. Bye bye.
Bye.